How much have you thought about bottled water? It's such a simple product, probably an afterthought in the fridge at the convenience store, in the fridge at home, or stockpiled in your trunk in case you get stuck on the side of the road. But where did it come from? How did that water get from wherever it was to inside of the bottle? And why are we paying several dollars at a time for something that comes at a fraction of the cost straight from the tap? The answers to those questions reveal the true impact of bottled water, both environmentally and ethically. And that impact is worth considering the next time you buy a bottle. Now, before we get into it, we should note that tap water is not a universal luxury. CDC estimates suggest that more than 800 million people around the world don't have safe drinking water. And even in the United States, cities have had to rely on bottled alternatives to tap water for weeks, months, or even years at a time. Cities like Jackson, Mississippi, Newark, New Jersey, as well as both Flint and Benton Harbor in Michigan, have needed to rely on bottled water in recent years due to aging infrastructure or toxic chemicals in their water supply. Stories we've unpacked before here on In the Loop. But if you're just going to the supermarket and buying a water bottle, you're getting a product that is far more expensive than what you get via tap.
When people are thirsty, it's a really appealing drink. That bottle of water that you buy in a cold case for $1.29, it's cheap in terms of the fact that you can slide $2 bills or 6 quarters on the counter and you're done. You could fill that bottle of water every day for 3,500 days, 9 years from your tap, before the tap water cost $1.29.
Charles Fishman, a contributing editor for the business magazine Fast Company, wrote a book about the economics of bottled water entitled The Big Thirst: The Secret Life and Turbulent Future of Water.
It's not better than tap water. It's not cleaner than tap water. In fact, tap water is much more tightly regulated than bottled water by state, local, federal government.
And that bottle has more costs than just what you pay for it at the store. Bottled water has a huge environmental impact. The water comes from a source, likely a lake, spring, or underground aquifer. On average, the manufacturer will have to use 3 liters of water just to produce 1 liter, roughly 34 fluid ounces, of water that can be bottled. At the plant that makes plastic bottles for water, they'll have to use roughly 2,000 times the energy needed to produce tap water. Much of America's plastic is made with energy from burned oil. Considering that bottled water is one of the most popular drinks in the US and consumers drink tens of billions of bottles each year, we're talking about tens of billions of gallons of oil used just to make water bottles each year. The bottle may have to go hundreds or thousands of miles on planes, trucks, or ships to get to your local store, with brands like Evian and Fiji shipping their water from France and Fiji, respectively. That bottle also usually just gets used once, with most of them not getting recycled after use. Michael O'Heaney, executive director at the environmental nonprofit The Story of Stuff Project, told us it can get even more costly when you factor how it got made.
Plastics fundamentally are products derived from oil and gas. And so part of the reason you see this huge growth in single-use plastics is less about demand, is less about consumers saying, I really want more single-use plastics in my life, and more about the sort of glut of hydrocarbons, and most specifically, the glut of fracked natural gas available in the United States.
Put all together, and your water has been through a lot before you drink it. Peter Glick is the co-founder and president emeritus of the Pacific Institute, an environmental nonprofit. He also wrote the book Bottled and Sold, a book about why we consume so much bottled water.
We have federal laws, the federal standard, the Safe Drinking Water Act, that defines standards for our tap water, that protect our tap water to a very high degree, that require that water agencies test tap water on a constant basis. I wouldn't argue that tap water is safer necessarily than bottled water, but it's certainly not any less safe than bottled water, which also has standards to bring it up to about the standard that our tap water has to meet.
And don't even get us started on the labeling of it all. 2 of the biggest water bottle brands, the Coca-Cola-owned Dasani and the PepsiCo-owned Aquafina, bottle purified water using what's called reverse osmosis filtration. That's one way of saying that they literally just use the same source as tap water. The advocacy group Food and Water Watch estimates that nearly 2/3 of bottled water sold in the United States comes from the same source as municipal tap water. That's gotten some folks really upset, and it's led to efforts to block companies from taking water from the tap supply and bottling it for sale. Legislation in Michigan and Maine proposed restricting the bottling of tap water or taxing companies that do it. But the most significant effort to address the issue came in Washington state. Legislators proposed making it the first state to ban water bottlers from using waters from springs and aquifers. The bill died in a state House committee, but legislators are hoping to address the issue in the future. State Senator Rufin Carlisle, a Democrat, introduced the bill.
Introducing this legislation was to recognize that bottled water companies were buying the rights to water, which in the West are a big deal, purchasing up the rights to water to basically get in front of the queue, in front of tribes, in front of agriculture, in front of regular neighborhoods, to be able to purchase that water right so they can bottle it and then, in effect, ship it around the world.
But there are criticisms of the idea of governing water too much or developing a free alternative. In Washington, a Republican legislator told residents that water law changes can take years to develop and should require broad discussions about the effects because of the potential for unintended consequences. But Carlisle points to another source of political pressure: the bottled water industry.
I think that the industry reacted with such a vigorous lobbying opposition and such a fierce opposition because they saw this legislation as existential threat to their ability to supersede and jump in front of the line and get access to these water systems in order to bottle it up and resell it.
And there's economic pressure too. A lot of that comes down to what you're actually buying when you buy a water bottle.
Bottled water is a great convenience. It's really appealing. You know, when you've been on a run, when you've been at the gym, when you're really thirsty, if you step into a convenience store and you look in the cold case and there's a bottle of water there sort of glistening in its clear plastic bottle for $1.29, that seems really appealing.
So we've come to our special in the loop tasting room for a blind taste test. I have filled up 5 glasses in front of me with different waters. I didn't fill it up. One of our producers filled it up. I have no idea what kind of water is in them. In fact, I have no idea if it's even water at all. Even so, I'll be tasting them and trying to spot some differences. To help me with that, we brought in a true expert, Martin Risa. He is one of the few people in the world to be certified as a water sommelier. Martin, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us. When it comes to the way that we will be tasting water today, I mean, what are some of the things that I should be looking for?
So I think the biggest surprise for a lot of people will be that water is not just H2O. There is more to every water on this planet, and these are the essential minerals and electrolytes. And you can actually taste the mineral composition of each water. That's the reason a bottle from Fiji tastes maybe different than a bottle from Washington, D.C. That is the interesting part about bottled water, and you can actually measure this by TDS, stands for total dissolved solids. And the more solids are dissolved, so the more minerals, the more electrolytes, the stronger will taste the water.
Let's give it a go then. We'll start. Here's number 1. Two. I feel like I do notice a difference between these two, actually.
Oh.
No, this one's just water. No.
There is no just water, huh? Every water is water. Amazing water.
If I didn't notice a difference with this one, then you'd have to check my pulse because clearly I'm not in the land of the living. All right, here's the last one. Okay. I did notice a difference between the first two. And Of course, the last two were very different than all the others because they were sparkling. You know the order. I don't know what's here. What is it that I should be tasting with these waters?
So you saw the difference between 1 and 2. Can you describe me a little bit the difference?
I don't know if it's the temperature or what, but something about the second one was distinctively different than I mean, they both taste like water, but there was something about the second that tasted different than the first. What is it that I'm tasting?
I can tell you what the difference is right there, because I said earlier about the mineral composition in TDS. So every water has a different TDS level. Your first one has a TDS of 222 versus your second one a TDS of 345. So you see there's a different number already. The first one is Fiji water from the Fiji Islands. The second one is Evian from Evian-les-Bains. This is the name of the town where Evian is coming from. So you detected more minerality in the second one, and that's the reason you had a broader and heavier mouthfeel on your palate. When you said it was bigger, it was more profound for me, that are the salts.
I was really wondering if one of these would end up being one of those processed tap waters that you were talking about. I'm very curious to know where this third one came from. You said,
but you said by the third one, you said just water. So what do you think what the third one is?
It's hard to, in going from the first to the second, I knew that there was a distinct difference. And going from the second to the third, I didn't know what exactly I was getting from the third at all. I mean, could this be processed tap water? I mean, you tell me. I know that you wouldn't want to do that to me, but could this be processed tap water?
This is your Washington DC tap water. It comes from it comes obviously from the Potomac River. This is the origin of your tap water. Then it's in the Washington Aqueduct, and from there it's been obviously produced or processed by 2 big treatment plants, what you have in Washington DC. And then the TDS is quite remarkable. It's between 160 and 270. It depends literally on the time when they're harvesting the river water.
Good to know. Let's move on to the last two because I want to figure out which two these are. This is clearly sparkling water. Where exactly is this from?
So this sparkling water is a very famous sparkling water from the United States, Mountain Valley Springs, the famous Mountain Valley Springs water.
Where is this from? And what can you tell me about the TDS levels here?
The TDS, it comes from Arkansas. TDS is 120. It's not that intense, TDS, but obviously the carbonation makes it a little stronger in taste.
The last two waters here were sparklings, and we've gone from still to sparkling. What is the last sparkling, and where is this from? I couldn't tell a difference between these two. I tried. I promise I tried.
So this is a German brand. It's called Gerolsteiner. So obviously to pronounce that water perfectly, you have to spend a lot of time with me first. And it comes from the Midwest German area, from the Rhineland-Pfalz. And it has a TDS of 2,500. So it's a lot of minerals dissolved in the last one. I think when you would retry 4 and 5, you will see there's a salty aftertaste in the 5th one versus the 4th one who doesn't have that.
There's definitely something, again, when I was trying the second one after the first, this similar situation here where something just feels fuller. It's almost like you're painting with more colors, right? It just feels a bit fuller. Maybe there's more depth to it.
That is what nature does. They kind of like using the same minerals, mostly calcium, magnesium, and sodium. Obviously, there are many, many other minerals dissolved, but these are the key minerals by every water. But the measurements of these minerals are totally different. So therefore, you will have a new painting or a new taste profile in your palate based on the different minerals dissolved by, again, nature.
Martin Risa is a certified water sommelier, author, TV personality, overall very patient and very humorous person. Martin, thank you so much for joining us on In the Loop.
I'm always here for you, and happy hydration to everybody around the United States.